Alright, champions, it's 2 days later. That head cold caught up with me. I slept for 12 hours last night. That wasn't fun. Really crept up on me, that one. It was, started off mild and just got worse and worse. But anyway, I can actually speak again now, which is good for videos. In the meantime, I got this thing done. She's whisper quiet and performing beautifully. Now, many of the issues with the noise were the previous work, but also some built-in mistakes from Mesa. Ground loops, poor grounding scheme, the stuff we've come to enjoy over the years from the masters of art in engineering, as the rear panel will tell you. So starting in the input jack, I removed that and just cleaned this connection to the chassis, like scuffed away the powder coat with a little sanding drum on the Dremel. That's your main preamp ground for your whole front end, so that's a critical ground right there. The other thing you can do is just mount a screw down here separately, but if you get this really tight with a lock washer and remove the powder coat, that's a reliable grounding point too. Just got to make sure that this nut stays tight. Same goes up the back here for the speaker. Speaker jacks are all grounded at this jack here via this ground bus, so that's a very critical ground. Removed all these jacks because that ground bus is holding them all together. They're all sort of rigid to each other, so they all had to come off to get to that hole there, and then remove the powder coating and just make sure that's really tight, because that's your main output ground. A secondary of the output transformer's tighter ground. Down here you can see the new screen grids, all metal film 2 watters. Popped some flyback diodes on the sockets there as well, just in case it ever gets run without a load, stop the thing from flaming up. Removed all the bell bottoms off the wires, all the melted insulation from the previous tech. It's not hard to solder these without melting the shit out of it. Just be careful and like I say, just watch your shaft. Don't put your shaft where it shouldn't be. Your barrel of your soldering iron to those not so immature. So these orange drops are known to fail even well within their rated voltage, so I upgrade the phase inverter output coupling caps, which are under quite a bit of potential, to some Panasonic, some little penny boys. You can see the size difference there, ridiculous. Now here's the originals, which are only 400 volt rated, and same capacitance. There's the little penny boys down there that are 630 volt rated, so it's got me fucked why anyone uses these things, because they're expensive, they're ancient, and, well, they like to fail even within their rated voltage in my experience. And they're friggin' massive. So penny all the way. And because they are much smaller, I just like to put a little bit of Teflon jacketing on their leads there. Now, coming over to this area where all the chaos was, you can see I've just got some substituted resistor in there, just sorting the bias out. That is very happy at a 45% idle dissipation in the bold mode on silicon rectifier, which is how this customer's going to use it. Using a 4.7 there instead of the stock 3.3. The stock value is 3.3k, this is a 4.7, and it's quite happy there, so I can install that permanently. Now, I've gone with some radial caps here because they're very high quality, and it also gives a bit more room to move down in the event that you would have to rework anything down here. And this is the bias area, so if you change your valves, you might have to change some components down there. It just gets everything off the board a bit. Now, remember, this amplifier is going to be inverted, so the heat from this resistor is going to go towards the board, but we've got a good inch, or probably an inch. Yeah, about an inch, maybe a little bit more than an inch there, clearance from the board. That's securely mounted to the tag strip over here, well, tag board, which we've installed. I'll just try and get a bit of angle. There's so much going on in these rat nest amps that it's hard to show you details like this. But we've got a little tag board down there, a little upright tag board, and that takes in the 50 volt winding, and also you've got the diode there for the bias supply, and then you've got the dropper resistor to the auxiliary supply. Now this was the one that was up on end in the previous videos, and you can see the burnt area on the board there as a result. So now that problem's mitigated. It's happy with the 250 ohm there. I didn't have any 220, so I thought I'd try 250 and see what the voltages land at, and they're actually pretty healthy. So you may be able to make out behind that diode there. There's two new resistors for the heater balancing. I was going to mount them on one of the output sockets, but that area is pretty crowded with the way they've arranged the wiring. Nose pads were still fine, so I've just lifted them off the board by about 1/4 of an inch, so if there ever is a failure, it won't burn the board in that area, but they are happy there. You may notice down here we've got that 68 ohm mounted to the chassis because where it was on the board wasn't conducive to mounting a power resistor. If they knew how to do PCB layout, it may have been, but they don't, and they never have, and they probably never will. So you see that resistor down there, it's blue wires disappear off to the chassis. That used to be mounted between this film cap and that, well, that was an axial cap on the board. But literally jammed so tight in there, a dropper resistor, emitting its heat and destroying stuff around it. So now that's taken out of the equation. See, what Mesa do is, instead of actually designing a transformer and like, you know, a power supply logically and efficiently, they just pull from someone, usually the bias winding, and then they've got all sorts of diodes and droppers and resistors and shit to not regulate, but to drop that voltage down to whatever they need. That's an extremely inefficient way of doing it, because you generate so much heat, which destroys the board. And also, for some reason, I don't know if it's some pathological obsession with using carbon compositions for dropper resistors, but every dropper resistor in like every Mesa amp I've ever seen has been a carbon composition. There's no excuse for that. There is some argument that they are pulse withstanding, but that's in highly specialized cases. This isn't anything like that. But that's the confidence we've come to know and love from Mesa Boogie. We've got some new balanced resistors down there. I'm just gone with 120k because that's what I had floating around. Not a critical value, anything between, well, you know, Marshalls use 56k. Fenders generally use 220k. For some reason, these guys chose 150k. Probably just a surplus thing. Got a new dropper down there, lifted off the board. That's actually a wire wound. It looks like a metal film, but it is a wire wound 5-watter. Down there, we've got a little 1-watt drop bar for one of the foot switch circuits. Right, so one thing that became apparent the more I worked on this is that power transformer's been replaced with a universal model at some point in this amp's history. And the person who replaced it didn't understand that you don't need to ground the center tap. Well, you shouldn't ground the center tap on a heater that's had artificially balancing done on the board there. And those resistors were still in place and connected to the heater circuit. Yet they still had the, as you can see earlier in the video, they still had the center tap for the heaters grounded on this point on the transformer. So we removed that and tied it off. You can see it there. The other thing that was an issue with these is the unused primaries just had a bit of heat shrink just attached to the end, and some of them had already fallen off and were floating around the chassis, exposing the bare mains, which could touch you know, the chassis anywhere and short out hard from the primary to the ground. So what I recommend doing in that situation is, you can see here I've turned the wire over on itself and then heat shrunk that, so the heat shrink can't pull off, because it would have to get over that U-turn there in the wire. And also, if you look down the end, there's no exposed core of the wire there. That's the way to do it. Now, this bold spongy switch was shitting me with how it was melted, so I replaced that. It just looked gross. It probably worked fine. But also the eyelets from the factory one, I'm assuming this is a factory switch, the eyelets were too small for the wires, so they couldn't pass through physically. So this new one has larger eyelets there. We've actually passed the wire through, done a U-turn, a proper mechanical connection before soldering, and then heat shrunk them, because that is primary mains exposed there. Now, the other thing, this is adding up very quick, as a lot of amps do, but you can't ignore this stuff, champions. So many other techs do, and then their amplifiers end up here, and I have to address all this stuff. If the previous tech had addressed this stuff, it wouldn't be an issue, but the mains was easily pull-outable, because the diameter of the cord wasn't thick enough. The cord's been replaced when the previous person replaced the power transformer, but the mains gland there, the cable retention clamp, wasn't suited to that diameter outer jacket of the mains cord. So now we've got a new cord on there. That's 1mm conductors and a larger outer jacket there, and I just replaced that. They're a couple of bucks just to put a new one. The old one had been mangled by the previous tech, so now you can't pull that out. And hiding down the bottom there, we've got our new dedicated ground or safety earth connection to the chassis. I've got rid of the self-tapper metal screw there that was expected to ground through the fucking powder coat, but you know, don't get me started on that. And we've mounted a stainless steel screw with a toothed eyelet, I call it. It's like a internal star washer that's got an eyelet coming off the side, and we've soldered that to it. Then I've got a flat washer, a spring washer, and then a nylock nut. And that's the way to do, well, all your grounds, but in particular the safety earth. So grounding brings me to the next thing. One of the major issues with the performance of this thing, the noise performance, there was a horrible hum underlying the, well, at all levels, despite the master volume. It did go away when you pulled the phase inverter. But what was happening is there's a ground connection on the board here. It was attached to a ground strap as well as a black wire. The black wire went up here, connected to the negative of this cap stack here, which is the reservoir capacitor ground. That also comes down here to a ground strap, which was ground at this transformer bolt. There was also one of those ground straps that came over here, was mounted to this bolt on the choke, and then disappeared under the choke and was connected here. So that was one big ground loop. And not only was it contributing to noise from the virtue of it being a ground loop, but it was also a shit way to ground things. So what I've done is I've attached the reservoir capacitor ground over here to the transformer HT center tap. They've got their own dedicated ground point here, scratched away at the powder coat with the Dremel. I've cut this wire here, or I've removed it completely, and I've installed a new grounding point up here, which you may or may not be able to make out through the wiring. So this is basically the ground for the tail end of the preamp, I guess you could say, everything up to like the phase inverter. The output valves are grounded directly to the chassis. Not a great way of doing it either, but I'd have to remove everything and rework the whole thing to do that. So basically, I've had to do what I can to get it as low as I can without rebuilding the whole amp. So essentially, this grounding point over here that used to have the ground strap, it's got one wire on it now going down to this point over here, and that has made the amplifier ridiculously quiet. I almost had to, the difference was so huge, I almost had to make sure that I put the phase inverter valve back in, or that I didn't knock out the speaker jack or something when I turned it on, because the difference was dramatic. So a lot of work to make these things, well, up to my standards of what the noise floor should be, in terms of the noise performance and, you know, all the thermal issues with all the components, and the lack of thought of mechanical rigidity in those components and that kind of thing. Now, it'd be a lot less work if these things weren't so cramped. I really hope that since Gibson took over them, they're going to start building stuff a bit more logically. But looking at the evidence so far of the products they've released, I think if anything, it's probably going to get worse. This is just my opinion. You know, we shall see. I find it really hard to believe that any of the major companies are going to have any impetus to get better at anything, to be honest. Because it's just a runaway thing to see how much money they can make and how ridiculously they can price things, and people keep buying them. I gave the knobs a bit of a ultrasonic bath too. It's amazing how much the knurling cleans up in the ultrasonic. Like a wire brush just doesn't do it. I use a brass wire brush because it's softer than the chrome, but it just can't get in there. But you put it in the ultrasonic, they come out like brand new. It's so good. Alright champions, I'll just take some notes and then let's get this thing back together and do a bit of genty sound testy. Alright legends, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, spread it around like heatsink paste. And I'll catch you on the next one.